Another edition of Riding Home here. Dean Legge, Matt DeBerry. Matt, let's get right into it. Booger McFarland is certainly an interesting character, and I want to read what he said about Kirby Smart to the audience, and we'll start talking about it from there. Of course, Booger played for Les Miles at LSU. I think he probably played. Well, he definitely played for Nick Saban.
Yeah.
And here's what he had to say about Kirby Smart. I do kind of want to clean up some of the quote. If you're a Bulldog fan and you're going to sit here and look at me in the eye honestly and say Kirby Smart has done less with more maybe than Mark Richt. So let me read what he actually said. If you are a Bulldog fan and you are going to sit there and stare honestly in the eye, Kirby has done less with more maybe than Mark Richt. So go ahead with your comments, because this is, I
mean, it's low-hanging fruit. People love to say this from the national media. I think people that aren't really in tune to the Georgia program, it's easy for them to say that because you look at the recruiting rankings and you look, and Kirby hasn't won a national title yet. So I guess, like you tweeted, I guess everyone expected Kirby Smart to win one by now, even though they have a pretty full trophy case, Dean. They have an SEC championship, a Rose Bowl championship, a Peach Bowl trophy, a Sugar Bowl trophy. And again, we're in the middle of a current Alabama dynasty. That thing's still going on. So to say that Kirby Smart should have won a national title by now and get past Alabama in his first 5 years, I mean, that's really tough. We're still in the middle of this thing. Nick Saban's not going anywhere. It looks like he's still got that machine oiled and going. So it's tough to get past Alabama. We see it every year. Kirby's knocking on the door. And again, you play for a national championship, make it to overtime. That's as close as you could possibly get to winning one. And again, Mark Richt wasn't fired for what he did in the first 5 years. He was the head of the program for a long time, and we could talk about that for a while. That's definitely another video. But Mark Richt did a really good job his first few years, and we're 5 years into the Kirby Smart era. This is a top 5 program, top 6 program that he's built. It doesn't look like it's going anywhere anytime soon. And as long as they're going into the season saying, hey, we can compete for a national championship, this might not be the year we win it. But as long as we're there competing until the SEC title game and we're in the run the whole way, that's all you can really expect. You can't expect Georgia to win a national title when they haven't won one since 1980,
Well, I have a couple of different. I have a procedural problem, and I have just a problem with saying he's done less.
Yeah.
I don't even know what in the world that means. Does that mean he's done less, like because he didn't win the second SEC championship? That was Mark's only SEC championship after the first one. I mean, he won 2. He certainly could have won a third in 2012, but there was no other time where he was even close. So, they were leading in the third quarter against number 1 LSU and got blasted the last 20 minutes of that game by LSU, running away with it in 2011. So my issue, so where I come from with all this is that I am a very big fan of Mark Richt, period, and for a lot of different reasons. But mainly because when you look at what he did with Georgia, I mean, Georgia was not where it needed to be at all. It was losing. It had lost 3 games in a row to Georgia Tech. That is a pitiful statement about where your program is. They lost 3 games in a row to Georgia Tech. They had lost 2 in a row. Excuse me. They had lost 2 of 4 against South Carolina. Okay, so 2 of 5 against South Carolina. I mean, that wasn't going very well. They were 1-4 against Tennessee and 1-4 against Florida. It was pitiful. Jim Donnan was a very good coach at Marshall. He was an adequate coach at Georgia. Ray Goff was an average coach at Georgia. So Mark came along and absolutely dominated Georgia Tech, dominated Tennessee, flipped the series against Auburn, and I would argue dominated Auburn for a 10-year period. So without a miracle in 2013 and a Heisman Trophy winner in 2010, Georgia very well runs that series for a long time against Auburn. Those are huge games. With all that said, and Mark pointed Georgia in the right direction, it was not where it needed to be, period. But to act like Kirby Smart has done less than what Mark did at the time, what people are doing is they are saying Georgia's one of the top 5 programs in the country and they've not won the national championship. That's what that is. I'm not going to talk about because I'm not specifically talking about Booger here because Booger said it, but people say this a lot. The critical thinking aspect of our educational system is missing because you are allowed to build a case about something and make an argument. To make an argument that someone has done less when they've won basically the same amount of games, have been more successful against ranked teams, against top 10 teams, and the only thing that they're missing, if you want to call it that, is a second SEC championship. Mark Richt didn't do those things at Georgia that Kirby's accomplished. Mark did not win the 3 New Year's Six Bowls in a 4 years period of his time. Mark had plenty of issues when you think about the first 5 years. Those were his best 5 years, but those were not unscathed. The loss to Florida in 2002, just like Kirby's loss to South Carolina in 2019, was inexplicable, although the Carolina loss was worse. Yeah. When you start thinking about the 2004 loss to Tennessee at home, it just made no sense at all. So, and you want to make the argument about quarterbacks? DJ Shockley was a better college quarterback than David Green. I would not have made the move there. I would have done exactly what Mark Richt did. But if you're going to have the argument about Kirby Smart and quarterbacks, which is a relevant and real, criticism, and you're going to talk about Mark, you've got to throw in there that a guy as gifted as DJ Shockley in the college realm played sparingly for 3 years before that. So I think my issue really here is that people don't know how to build cases for what they say. We live, unfortunately, in a hot take world, which is what it is. You and I participate in that occasionally. But our audiences deserve better than this. Mark Richt did not do more than Kirby Smart with less, and Kirby did not do less with more. They both have had 2 very good 5-year runs. Yeah. The difference, I think, is pointing forward. This was Kirby's worst year in its matured time at Georgia, and he finished in the top 10. We can't. Mark had losing records after a while, so I don't know what we're comparing. Mark, I mean Matt, are we comparing the first 5 years to the first 5 years? Are we comparing the first 5 years to the last 5 years? The last 5 years of Georgia were a disaster. Yeah. Okay, it's a little bit like saying, why did you break up with your ex-girlfriend to go with your wife? Well, what are you talking about? It wasn't working.
I cover recruiting, so I see it. Kirby recruits at a top 2 level.
Yes.
1 or 2 every year, and he's built a top 5, top 6 program out of it. Mark Richt recruited at a top 10 level, towards 8, 9, or 10 mostly, and sometimes the team was out of the top 25. So it's hard to really take Booger's comments seriously when Kirby has built a top 5, top 6 program, even though he does have the number 1 or 2 recruit. He's doing well. He's doing very well with the talent. And again, 2019 LSU, some people think is one of the best teams we've seen. This year's Alabama team, some say even better, one of the best teams of all time.
Right.
I mean, come on now. Mark Richt's teams aren't coming close to those guys.
Well, the 2002 team might.
Well, the 12 team was really good too. And
let's not forget about. Well, I mean, again, which are we talking about? Mark's best 5 years. Again, those were good teams.
Different eras of college football too. In the early 2000s years, I mean, the way you play the game is so much different than the way you play it now. And the athletes are different. You have different positions. You've got the star position on defense. You've got your edge guys. The game has changed so much, but it is a hot take. It gets people riled up. We're fully into the offseason. We're getting those hot takes now. And you got to roll with it, but it is fine. It gives us something to talk about. Right. But he didn't think this one through.
Well, but here's the thing. If you want to talk about Mark's best 5 years, so that would be 12.
2.
Okay, so it would be 2, 3, 4, 5, 12.
14.
And 7. I'm sorry, 7.
Yeah, 7.
So 2, 7, 12 in that order. And then 4. Well, I mean, 8 wasn't the end of the world either. They just got their brains kicked in by Alabama and Florida.
14 had a lot of promise, but they didn't have a quarterback.
They didn't have a quarterback. Yeah, I mean,
03, 04, 05 kind of run in together a little bit. Those are all really good teams.
Let's not forget the 2002 season. I was on the field for this entire deal, right? I mean, like not every single game. Excuse me. You're on the field. You're having to survive a average Clemson team? Were they average?
Looking back on it, yeah.
Yeah. South Carolina, you're having to save your butt as they run flying down the field with Dontrell Pinkins. You had to save yourself there. Huge win at Alabama. Shouldn't have been as close as it was. Billy Bennett, star. You lose to Florida. You had to survive Tennessee at home. Auburn. And then the Auburn game. They were very hot at the end of that year.
Yeah.
I think about this stuff a lot. I think the 2017 probably beats the 2002 team. The 2012 team, they might beat the 2002 team as well. The difference in those teams and now is, the league is the top of the league is better. It just is. 2005 Georgia is the last conference champion in the SEC who has not played for a national championship.
Yeah.
Now, that's 16 years in a row where they played for it, 15, whatever it is. When you think about the 2005 team, they
shouldn't have lost that last game. They were a better team than
West Virginia.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a giant deal. But I think when you compare the two eras and what Kirby's doing, he's not just winning with Brian Van Gorder. Remember how we heard about how great Brian Van Gorder was? As it turns out, his best years were at Georgia. They're beating people's brains in. Like, these games are not close. This year is the first time in a while. This I would say 10-game stretch from middle 2019 to post-Florida 2020. Those were games that were sort of competitive games where you were having to win by 20 against Kentucky, but it was ugly. Yeah. You're beating Tennessee, but you're losing at the half. That was some Mark Richt stuff. Kirby's teams, probably 60 to 70% of the time, bro, these games aren't even competitive.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like the Missouri game, the South Carolina game. That's what these games have been like, or even the Auburn game this year. Mark's teams didn't do that all the time or a lot. They did it, I think, of the 2011 game where they absolutely ambushed Auburn. But Kirby's teams have a way of removing any doubt who the better team is.
At the end of Mark Richt's career, everyone, I guess the national media perspective was Georgia can't win the big game. Mark Richt can't win the big game anymore. Aaron Murray can't win the big game anymore. We've gone from that to, Georgia just can't win the national championship anymore. They can win big games, and they can win Sugar Bowls and an occasional SEC title game, and they beat top 10s consistently, and that's a fair statement. But they just haven't gotten over that hump. And again, we're still in an Alabama dynasty. That'll go away eventually. And while Kirby's still at Georgia, Nick Saban is going to leave. So there's still plenty of time. We're 5 years into this, and we're talking about another team in 21 that could be the team to win national championship. This program has a green arrow trending up, and it was hard to say that during the Richt years
because it wasn't.
It wasn't, yeah.
I mean, in 15, that was a debacle.
Yeah.
But when you think about this criticism, there's criticism to be had of Kirby Smart, man. I mean, like 100%. He's not the perfect coach.
No.
But are we going to start saying this about Lincoln Riley? What about Ryan Day? Are the only two coaches in college football now, three coaches in college football right now who are any good? Jimbo, Dabo, Nick, and Easy Ed? Is that it? Are you telling me you'd rather have Ed Orgeron than Kirby Smart?
Why does Lincoln Riley get a pass?
I'm asking the question.
I don't understand that. I thought he'd be getting killed a lot more for their big game dumps.
What is the criticism of Lincoln Riley? That he's not won the national championship? That he's not won a college football playoff?
If you're going to give it to Kirby, you better link.
Bob Stoops was killing everybody. I mean, Bob Stoops won one national championship. Yeah. He got I don't have a problem with Bob Stoops. Yeah. I don't care. Bob Stoops got the nickname Big Game Bob because they were getting their butts blown out in every single game that they played that mattered.
So, and that's more of an Oklahoma thing now, more than a Bob Stoops thing, as it continues to happen. But
listen, even Clemson, man. I mean, and when you play in big games, that means you're either going to win them and be the champion, or you're going to lose and get the criticism.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know that there's been a lot of criticism of Dabo yet. that Big Game record ain't so hot here all of a sudden for Dabo, who was boy genius about 2-3 years ago. This is what we do. This is how this works, and I just I accept that, but I think once you start talking about Mark Richt, who again wasn't a good coach at Georgia, he was a great coach at Georgia. He was not an elite Nick Saban, Bear Bryant coach, but he was a great coach at Georgia, period. And I just...
Are they gonna be compared to each other the whole time? Are we gonna hear Kirby Smart and Mark Richt in year 6, year 7, what they were both doing? I didn't think we'd be comparing them like this much. I mean, I guess until Kirby wins a national title, he'll always be compared to Mark Richt. That's what we're doing every year now.
Why don't we compare him to Vince? I mean, it took Vince 19 years almost to win the national championship.
But we don't do that at other schools, it seems like.
Can I just please make this statement?
Yeah.
And you old-timers can just deal with this statement. Again, we are not fanboys of Kirby Smart. We have to deal with the guy on a every week basis. He's a better head coach than Vince Dooley. Period.
Yeah. I mean, without Herschel, what is Vince Dooley?
Thank you. I mean,
I'll say it.
I mean, without Herschel, but you get credit for the guys you
do. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
absolutely.
That's the whole thing. So,
absolutely.
Vince would have 3 SEC championships, and he is a great coach.
Yeah.
It's just that, Vince's path to the SEC championship did not involve playing the Bear to win it. Yeah. You played Alabama every now and then. And by the way, Nick Saban is better than Bear Bryant. And this isn't being a prisoner of the moment. This is acknowledging what is reality, which is that, Bear, I would say Saban is 1, Bear is 2, and I don't even know if I would go as far as say Spurrier's 3, but Spurrier's up there.
100%.
And, I mean, Urban, I don't know where Urban is in all of this. The guy's got 3 national championships. He's probably above Spurrier, but Spurrier changed the league.
Yeah.
But Kirby has. Go ahead.
Nick's ability to adapt and get ahead of college football as an older veteran head coach who's already a Hall of Famer. At the end of his career, he goes, you know what? Let's switch it around. Let's throw it around. Let's adapt before any of these, coaches in their 30s before they adapt. Before I do. That was absolutely huge. And the fact that he's still doing this, maybe had his best team of all time. I mean, how old is he? He's almost 70, right? He's
79, 69 years old.
Incredible what he's been able to do.
He's one of the best organizational leaders on earth, probably. The other thing I would say about the current climate, because Mark had to deal with Nick Saban as well. You start thinking about that 12 game. Georgia wins the national championship if they
Well, that was the national championship, and the winner just got to beat Notre Dame in front of the national television audience 2 weeks later, or whatever it was.
The truth of the matter is that when you look at the pantheon of time that Georgia, with Kirby and Georgia, played 3 games against Alabama. I think Clemson's beaten Bama twice since 2016. They're 2-1 against Alabama. A tight one, a blowout, and a blowout. So blown out, blew them out. Auburn has won twice against Alabama. LSU has won once against Alabama. Maybe with the exception of the LSU game in whatever it was, 19, and the Clemson game in 18, where Alabama was absolutely blown out. Georgia's played them better or as well as anyone in the country. I mean, when you start looking at that national championship game, look at the SEC championship game, you look at the game in Tuscaloosa, which people are wanting to erase from their memory. No, you need to watch it. Georgia's games, these last 3 games against Alabama, who is the standard right now in college football and has been for the last 12 years, Georgia's games against Alabama have been Alabama's toughest games. It's just that Alabama's won all 3 of them.
Tell Booger that.
Well, Booger's not using his words,
right.
And I have that problem sometimes myself. Booger, I will be glad to talk about criticisms of Kirby Smart because there are plenty. The number one being misuse of the quarterback position.
Yeah.
But and it's not exclusive to that one problem. I mean, Kirby can be temperamental for no reason, I feel like sometimes. He
might not be the easiest to work with the media or people on his staff. There's a lot that he could be better at.
Yeah, but that's what he is, and that's his deal. But I think he has developed as a coach. That was not something that he was really, really good at in 2016. I just remember the South Carolina game on the sideline and letting the clock roll. He thought he had called a timeout, but I mean, he doesn't. I mean, he's become a better coach. Period. Yeah. He's developed. So, but he has issues like all of us, But I think we got to start using our words better. I mean, if Booger wants to have a discussion about how Kirby Smart can get better, I would be glad to participate in that. There's nothing wrong with that. But to say Mark Richt,
it's almost like he had a random thought in his head, taking a shower, and then he got out and just tweeted it without really doing anything.
Don't you think before you talk, even on these videos? I mean, we don't.
I try. If I said everything that comes to mind, this would be bad. This would be real bad.
Well, same here, because there'd be a lot more cussing and so forth.
Yeah.
But I think that one quick thing about the Bama versus Georgia Bama in that 2012 game. You had two special teams plays that earned Georgia 14 points. So the Alec Ogletree blocked field goal for a touchdown, and then you also had a fake punt from I don't know who threw it, but Artie Lynch.
Yeah.
Okay. So Georgia's extremely aggressive there, etc. Georgia, with these last three games, has just played Alabama. I mean, with the exception of the Justin Fields fake punt at the end, there's not been any trickery going on. This has just been what it is. And so that's the difference between the two programs. And also the other thing is, are we talking about the last 5 years of Mark, which are not going to close, or the first 5 years or Mark's best 5 years? I mean, Mark's best 5 years, I mean, you've got.
There needs to be more context. That's not something you can just tweet out there. And everyone runs with it too. I feel like most people are like, oh yeah, Booger says it. It's probably right. I'm sure he has a point. But if you asked him to communicate and talk about his point in detail, I think he would have a little bit of an issue doing that.
I think so too. Check us out on the next Riding Home. Dean Legge, Matt DeBerry for Dog Post. See the playlist up there. We'll see you on the next video.